If you're referencing other cells during a macro recording, like you're making Q1 bold, then the one below that italics, you need to know that there's a difference between absolute versus relative referencing. So if I stop the recording there, and I come over and I run the macro, it's going to make that bold, but instead of making the cell below that italics, it's going to go back to the last cell that I had recorded. That's what's called absolute referencing. In other words, when you're moving from cell to cell to cell during a recording, the last cell selected is the cell that the macro is always going to go to, no matter whatever cell you select when you run the macro later. And that's the default. And that's not going to help me out, but before I show you relative referencing, let's go ahead and do a recording with the default absolute. So I'm going to go ahead and start with that cell, select it, and then to record, let's come up here, click on the View tab, go to the Macros group, click on the drop-down arrow and say Record, and then we'll call this Absolute, and we'll do Control M, click OK. We'll make that bold. Let's come up here on the Home tab, select Bold, and then go down to the cell below it, make it italics, and then stop it. Then we can go to the next quarter and run the macro by coming back up here, clicking on the View tab. I mean, you can do the shortcut Control M, but we can do it here as well. To refamiliarize you with the other ways you can run macros, click on the macro button, select the macro, click Run. It makes that bold, but it goes back to the last cell always. Because, again, by default, when you record a macro, it's going to be an absolute reference. Now, if you want it relative in that, if I go ahead and make that bold, and then come down here, make it italics, and then come down here, make it italics, and then run that in any part of my worksheet relative to what I had selected up here. So if I had another database down here and I ran the macro as a relative reference, it would do the first two cells, and then how many cells in between that before it comes down here? 1, 2, 3, 4. It would do the first two cells, and then it would go 1, 2, 3, 4, do the last one here. To turn off the absolute referencing, or better yet to turn on relative, you need to have the Developer tab up. If you don't have it, then go ahead and right-click anywhere on the ribbon, go down to Customize ribbon, and down below you'll see Developer, check it, click OK, then click on it, and it's right there in the code group, Use Relative References. So let's come back up here, select Q3, and say use that, and then start recording, and that's it. With this turned on, it's going to look at the pattern here, or what I have relative, and not going by the last cell that I have selected, and just, when I run it over here, going back to the last cell. So click on Record, let's do Relatives, click Okie dokie. Let's come up here on the Home tab, make that bold, come down here and make it italics, and let's come down here for fun and make that red. Ooh, that's fun. Let's go ahead and click Stop. Come over to Q4, and because it's relative, let's come back up here, click on the View tab, click on Macros and Relatives, click Run. Isn't that fun? And then by the way, when I'm done, let me click on the Developer tab. Since I don't use relative references a lot, I want to make sure that I deselect it so I don't go through a lot of work and go, oh, I meant to use absolute. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel to get notified of the latest videos. And for great specials on my products, please see the description below this video.